This is the Zhiyun Smooth-X. I've been putting it through its paces. It's an interesting little bit of kit because unlike most gimbals that you're going to find on the market these days, this isn't a 3-axis model. This is only a 2-axis model. What does that mean? Well, if you look at the setup at the top just here, and this is really where everything happens, we see we've got a roll axis just here, and we've got a pan axis just there, but we don't have a tilt axis. So it's only stabilizing in those two directions. Now that's interesting because 3-axis gimbals have become almost a cliche at this point. So for someone to come to market with something that has less than the 3 is interesting to start with. I've used phone gimbals in the past, and the reason I got them was to do behind the scenes videos, Instagram lives, that kind of thing. I had the idea that I would be using them and getting smooth shots and it would look better and I'd be happier with the way that it all came out. The fact of the matter is that they just became a little bit too cumbersome to take out on the shoots with us. You know, they're sort of big, they flop around. I could never be bothered to set it up. It was always easier just to grab the phone and do something rather than load the phone up, get it balanced and set it all up. And I just never liked the way that they worked because they were fairly large things and they just took up too much space. Now that sounds ridiculous because when we go out on shoots we have tons of equipment and all kinds of stuff, but that's for the job, that's doing what we're doing. So when I'm looking at things that are behind the scenes or vlog or any of the stuff which isn't actually the job that we're doing, I like the simplest, smallest setup possible. And that's shown by the setup that I use for vlogging. I've got a GoPro 7 and a selfie stick and a wireless mic, and that's it. I don't go with having a big DSLR for it because it would be too much to carry. I would find it a pain. It would be really obvious on set as well. So we like to keep it a little bit more subtle and therefore make it something which is far more likely to get used. This is interesting to me because it actually folds up really small. So at the moment I've got it extended out. If we fold it round and then take that back into the center, I have to admit the first time you put this together, it does feel like you're going to break it, but it's pretty robust, and that's it. Now to me, having that is far more appealing than having something which is always built out, always ready and flopping around all over the place. That is neater, it is easier to put it in a bag, it kind of locks everything together so it doesn't feel like you're going to break it so much. And yeah, I quite like the look of it. Now I've been putting it through its paces and it does feel like it works pretty well. I haven't really felt the lack of a 3rd axis. The 2 axes that it has seem to do a good enough job of capturing generally what you would want to capture with your phone, be it selfies or just walking around filming things. If I'm just walking normally, I am going to get some of that lateral shift that you get when you don't walk steady with a gimbal, but it's not too bad. Obviously that's on the ultra wide on iPhone 11. If we go onto the telephoto mode, then that lateral shifting is going to become a little bit more obvious and you can see things moving up and down. Turn around, go back the other way. So just looking at, say, all of these horizontal lines on the fence, I imagine we're going to get a little bit of jumping up and down. But that's true of any gimbal. It's not something that you immediately fix just by having an extra axis. So these 2 axes are working pretty well. Now what you are getting is a little bit of jump back and forth. Now I'm used to bigger gimbals, be it the Weeble S we've used quite a lot. We got a Ronin S, we had a Ronin M, we've got a Ronin 2 which is huge, you know, that's one of the bigger gimbals available on the market, and we have that going out on vehicle rigs and all kinds of stuff. With the Ready Rig I've got that built out with a big Ursa on it. So I'm used to the way that gimbals function and I'm used to doing the right movements to get the best out of them. So I didn't find I had a problem getting this to look quite good. That said, you do have to be aware of your movements, and if you are just walking with completely flat feet and not trying to gracefully move around, then you're going to notice the shifts that you get on all gimbals, but perhaps more so with this because you don't have that tilt stabilisation as well. Something else which is interesting about this particular model is the fact that it's got this extendable selfie stick built in. Now that actually makes it really usable if you are using it for taking selfies, filming yourself, and it also helps to stabilize everything off a little bit because it takes the movement of your hand away from the phone a little bit. So it's far more likely you're going to get a smooth movement as long as you're able to hold it steady. And that's actually a little bit of a problem because this handle is really light. There is nothing inside it. Buttons and wires perhaps, but no batteries or anything with any weight. All of the weight is at this end of the gimbal, and that, I feel, is a little bit problematic. Because we have the battery at this end and the encoders at this end, and also whatever phone you're mounting is going to be mounted at that end as well, you have a lot of mass just there, and none down here. So that means using it fully extended, even though it's not that far, can actually be quite a chore. So after a few minutes of using it, you're going to notice it's really pulling down on your hand. And I find that when I'm using it, if I shift my grip, I feel like I could drop it at any moment just because there's nothing here which is counterbalancing everything that's going on at the top. The model with the tripod is the one to get because even though it's a tiny bit more expensive and you may not want to use the tripod mount, I think it's actually going to add a really, really necessary counterweight to the whole thing because at the moment it just feels a little bit unbalanced in my hand. And I don't like that. I want to feel secure when I'm using something like this, especially if I've got my phone on the end, especially because to use my phone properly, felt like I had to take it out of its case. It didn't quite seat right when I had it in the case. So I'm really aware that if I drop it, my phone's no longer in a case even, because to get it sitting right just there, it just felt like I had to not use the case because it didn't quite have enough depth there. You can kind of get it in, but again, it felt like it might ping out. So I didn't want that either. Loading your phone in when you don't have a case, I find really worrying because these have a lot of tension. So do be careful and maybe do it like over a table or something, because if that accidentally pings and knocks the phone out of your hand, your phone's going to go flying. So yeah, just things to be aware of when you're setting this up. Now the setup of the device is interesting because it does require that you have the app downloaded onto your phone and that you sign up to use it. That's only the first time. I don't know if this is going to be a case where if they update the app, you've also got to re-sign in or anything like that. And that could be a real pain if suddenly there's a firmware update rolled out and you've got to go through the sign up process and it takes a few minutes and it's just a real chore to do. Maybe the case, may not be the case, but certainly the first time you're using it, you're going to have to sign up. And I've seen a couple of reviews on YouTube with people who have refused to do this because they don't like the idea that you have to sign up to Zhiyun's app to use the gimbal. And I can kind of get where they're coming from. It's just a weird thing to have to do. The device should work by itself. It should be a standalone thing. Why do I have to sign up to your proprietary software and put in all my details to be able to use this device that I bought? Now, I obviously have gone through the process and done that, so I didn't mind that much, but it's something you should be aware of if you're buying it. You need to go through that sign-up process to use it. Within the app, you have access to the zoom, start, stop, record, and you've also got the mode switch. But they have a couple of other things built into the camera features there. So there's the beauty mode, there's a panoramic mode, hyperlapse mode, time-lapse mode, all these different things which allow you to get more out of what you're filming if that's the kind of thing that you want to get out of what you're filming. Now we're going to test out the beauty modes just here, and we're going to put it straight onto iron large. We're going to brighten my face. Oh my god, we're going to smooth my skin. We're going to slim it down a little bit, and rosy. So, oh, that is so weird. That's a little bit strange. Beauty mode, let's turn that off. Oh my god. Well, that's a cruel awakening just there. That's just cold. So for example, the beauty filters, I don't really have a place for those in my life, but I know that some people will really dig that feature. Likewise with the time-lapse and the hyperlapse. Hyperlapse, actually, I have to say, I wasn't very impressed with the hyperlapse feature. When you are speeding up the footage that you're getting when you're walking around, unless you're walking incredibly smoothly, it just doesn't look good. You'd need to go through some kind of post-stabilisation to make that work. Now this is coming from someone who has done a lot of manual hyperlapse, so actually getting a monopod and a DSLR and moving, looking at a particular point and then stabilising in post. I've had a lot of experience with that kind of thing, and the hyperlapse that I'm getting out of this just isn't good. You would need to put a lot of effort into it to make it work, in my opinion. Other video features within the app are the ability to select and track someone. Now this seems to me like it's a contrast-based detection system. So if you have a very high contrast between the subject that you're drawing your box around and the background, it will track it just fine. It will move the gimbal to keep them in frame. but if something else crosses, if the contrast drops, I found that it loses the subject quite easily. So it could be useful, say if you had this set up on a tripod and you wanted to film yourself walking around, you just draw the box around yourself and then off you go. That could work really well. But in a lot of scenarios, I think you're probably going to find that it loses you, and that could be quite frustrating. So the tracking on this doesn't seem to be as good as tracking that I've used on, say, the DJI Mavics. That is absolutely superb. But then again, this is far, far cheaper than a Mavic, so I don't know that we should expect the same level of software tracking as we have in that when it's retailing for this in the UK at the moment. So take it with a pinch of salt. It does work, but you just have to make sure that you've got a high contrast between yourself and the background. Now, outside of Zhiyun's dedicated app, I've tried this with the native iPhone camera app as well. Works just fine for start, stop, record. Obviously, you don't have access to all of the other features, and you can't zoom in or zoom out, but if you do just want to use the native camera app, that is an option, and you can start and stop the recording. Obviously, we can have the camera in selfie mode, or you can be looking out and filming what's on the other side of you. So either one works, that's just fine. And with a couple of clicks of the mode button, you have the option of going to vertical, so you can do your Instagram lives, you can do Instagram stories, and that's gonna work whether you're on the native camera app or in the Zhiyun app, no problem at all. And then I decided to go like to the extreme. So I loaded up Filmic Pro and I set all of the settings to max, and I thought, how much can we get out of this footage on the phone with the gimbal? So here are some behind the scenes shots of a fashion shoot that some of the team were on. I thought I'd grab some Filmic Pro goodness on this just to see how much we can eke out of it. So this is like as far as you can push what this gimbal is capable of. You have glorious Filmic Pro quality. So I've got the wide, I've got the standard focal length, and I've got the telephoto lens also on that iPhone 11 that I'm using. So this should give you a bit of an idea about how far you could push it if you did want to try and eke as much goodness out of it as possible. And here's the million-dollar question. Is this thing worth your money to buy? Given that there are other gimbals out there that have 3 axes, should you buy this one? And for the price, I don't think I can complain. This works well enough. I prefer the form factor, the fact that it folds up really small and kind of stabilizes itself, and little design notes, like you got this rubber foot just here, helps to keep it secure on whatever surface you're putting it down on, and gives you a little bit more grip when you're setting up as well. So I like that they've thought about how this is going to be used and how it's actually going to be stored as well. Now I'm in the great position of having access to all kinds of huge gimbals and I'm using them on a day-to-day basis, but if I did have the need for a really small compact gimbal, I think this would be my choice at the moment. So that is the Zhiyun Smooth-X, and I hope this has been useful.